I've got a question for you. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Annie Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Hello, thank you for tuning in to Be the Person podcast. I'm so excited to have my personal friend, Amberly Lago, here with us today. She is so amazing. She has a best-selling book, hosts the True Grit and Grace podcast, hosts the Unstoppable Success Summit, and anything this lady does, you just want to be a part of. Amberly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I am so excited to be a guest on your show. So thank you for having me.
Yes, you have amazing experience. You've done so many things and you make it all look so easy. But I know that there's a backstory here. And I would just love, before we jump into your book, which I have, I just love um, True Grit and Grace. It's been a book I read and then I listened to as well. And actually, I don't even know if I ever told you this. Before we met, I had pretty major hip surgery. I had my labrum replaced and I had to do a lot of swimming pool rehab. And so I took your book and listened to it on Audible when I was doing the rehab because I didn't like to do it. But I thought, oh my goodness, after everything you've been through, I can't complain about one little surgery. And Annie, just get in there and do your rehab.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
But you know what? It's so interesting. And that's the reason I wrote the book, by the way, is I was like, I could not have gone through so many surgeries and a near death experience for nothing. There has to be a way to turn the pain to purpose. And I wrote the book because I thought if I can inspire one person to not give up, if I can give one person hope to just keep moving forward, then it does turn everything, all the pain, everything into passion and purpose for me. And so thank you for sharing that with me. And I just want to go back to something that you said. Uh, I just laughed when you said it, you make everything look easy. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I just did a post on Instagram about this morning. And I wrote like, don't let social media fool you. We all struggle with something. And yesterday was one of those days where I was like, well, I kind of know why now. I had to kind of be aware and think about why I was kind of feeling the way I was, but I just had this like my heart felt like it was pounding so hard. I felt like, oh my gosh, if somebody looks over at me, they're going to be able to see my heart like in my shirt. Like that's how intense. And I was like, where is this anxiety coming from? And, I think that everything that we go through, we learn different skills. It starts to build our mental toughness, our grit, our resilience, so we can get through the hard days. And today I did do some things that really helped. Everything from practicing gratitude to working out. I actually worked out twice yesterday because I was like, okay, this anxiety has to go somewhere. It's going to be I'm going to leave it at the gym, you know? And then reaching out, being of service. And today I woke up and I feel like a new person. So there's always hope that, my goodness, thank goodness we get to start a new day and have a new beginning each day. But yeah, it's definitely not always easy. It's not always easy dealing with the chronic, nerve disease that I was diagnosed with. And being an entrepreneur, as you know, it's like, wow, it's like the work hours are just, I had to get real clear on what my work hours were and all the things. And so, yeah, I'm just happy to be here and share some of the things that have helped me get through some of the biggest challenges of my life.
Oh my gosh, I love so much about that. One, that you share and you're vulnerable because in your place, you don't have to. You really do make everything look easy. But I think for all of us, there's some type of struggle, there's something going on, and we can pretend and make it look easy, or we can just show up and be real. And I just appreciate that about you, that you do. You show up and you're just real, that there are days that are just challenging.
Yeah. And I think that when we can be real and we can share what we're going through. I mean, definitely I started to share my struggles in a safe place with a small community that I knew I loved and I knew cared about me. But my tendency still to this day is I would isolate whenever pain or anxiety or struggle came up. I was like, I'm good. I'm just going to like isolate, not tell anybody. And that actually led me to a lot of bad decisions, pain, depression, and eventually, that physical pain led to emotional pain, which led to that isolation, which led to addiction. And by the grace of God, I got sober back in 2016, but I had so much shame because, like you're such an incredible athlete and fitness is such a big part of your life. For me, I was this health and wellness expert. I was sponsored by Nike. I had a fitness career and I started drinking every day to try to stuff down and numb out the pain. And I remember thinking, okay, well, this isn't the best thing to do. Like, I know this is not the healthiest thing to do, but I was like, I was trying everything for my pain and it was not helping at all. And I thought, why didn't the doctors just tell me to knock back a glass of wine? And I was like, if this is what I have to do every day, I know it's not the healthiest thing, but I guess this is what I'm going to have to do. And it worked until it didn't. And my life started really spiraling downhill into where I was really isolated. I did not want anybody to know what I was doing and how I was hiding it. And, by the grace of God, and I think my children inspiring me, that I thought this cannot be the rest of my life. Here I've survived a motorcycle accident where I almost died, 34 surgeries, and I'm slowly killing myself with alcohol. And I prayed and I reached out for help, and that changed my life. So if you're listening and you're struggling with anything, it may not be addiction, it may be anxiety, it may be depression, it may just you be, maybe you're feeling hopeless. Reach out for help. Yeah, I know it takes courage. That was so scary to me. It took so much courage to admit that I had a problem and that I needed help. But once I did, I was able to take action steps with grit and connect with a community who understood me and who helped me and that gave me hope. And sometimes I think all we need is that little glimmer of hope. Keep moving forward.
Yes, agree. And I think community can be such a big part of that because I think it's human nature just and shame when it shows up. You don't want to show anybody and you want to be alone. And that makes it so much worse that
Mm,
we can do this together. Everybody has something. We just have to be willing to share.
exactly.
Let's go back before I know you mentioned a little bit about your story, but let's go back to I love how athletics and dancing, running have always been part of your story. Can you take us back growing up in Texas? And in your book, you talk a little bit about going to Dairy Queen and dancing on the tables. Maybe just take us from there on the role fitness played and then how that changed.
Yeah, well, it's so funny, my mom put me in dance when I was 3 years old, and I think it's because it was, like, the girly thing to do because I was such a tomboy. I mean, I was a tomboy all the way up through high school, and so she put me in dance. Like I said, I think she was like, "Okay, we're gonna put her in dance." see if she'll, maybe get a little more graceful. But I love to dance. And what I loved so much about dancing was, first of all, when I would dance, I could see that spark of joy that it would give people. Everywhere I went, I loved tap dancing especially. And everywhere we would go, my friends or my mom would say, do a tap dance for them. And I would just break out into a tap dance and everybody would smile and clap and they were so excited. And I loved seeing that how you could spread joy just by doing something as simple as dancing. And so I don't know why, but my mom let me go every Friday night with the band after the football game. They all met at the Dairy Queen, and I would get on the table. They'd put money in the jukebox, and I would dance all night on the table, and everybody would laugh and clap and smile. And it just lit me up, and it made everybody happy. And so I loved doing that. And then later on in life, when my mom remarried a man who ended up sexually, it was terrible. I was 8 years old and he sexually abused me.
Mm.
And talk about shame. I had a lot of shame and didn't tell anybody about that for a long time. And I noticed that what I would do in that moment, that awful feeling, that shame, that fear, actually,
Mhm.
um, I started getting into athletics and I tried out for the track team. I hadn't conditioned at all, and I was like, go for this. And I made the track team, and I noticed how running made me feel better. It was a time on the track where I would connect to God and pray, and that's where I felt the closest. I know that sounds kind of weird because I grew up in the Bible Belt going to church every Sunday, but I actually felt like I connected more with God on the track, running. And the harder I ran and the more races I won, the better I felt. The more I did in school, the more straight A's I got, the better I felt. And so I ended up setting a record for running the fastest mile in Texas. And the more I did these things, just the better I felt. That pain, that fear actually fueled my purpose to do more and do better. And then I always knew at a young age that I was going to go to LA and be a professional dancer. And I had a very successful career doing that. I learned a lot about uh, failing, getting cut, not getting the job, hearing the word no, which has helped me in my entrepreneurial journey because I just learned and grew from every single time. And every time I got a no, I was like, okay, well, then I'm one step closer to a yes. And I just kept going and I kept working harder. And so it taught me a lot of discipline. And then that I got into the fitness industry. In fact, my daughter and I have been working out together. Her and her friend, they let me train them. It's so awesome that my 15-year-old and her friend like want to learn from me. So we've been going to the gym every day and we were taking a golf cart ride in last night and it made me feel so good as a mom that, like, she was telling her friend, "Well, yeah, my mom, she had a fitness business. Like, she taught trainers how to get certified. Did you know she was sponsored by Nike?" And I was like, "Oh, to hear my daughter, like, proud, that makes me
Absolutely.
so happy?"
That's awesome and wonderful. And that was your life, really. You had this successful business. You're sponsored by Nike, doing all of these things, right, in LA. And that changed in a split second.
Oh, it changed in a split second. And another thing that reminded me of that last night when we're in the golf cart. So my daughter has her permit and she's driving, and where we live, you can drive golf carts all over the town. It's a small place. And she gets in, she's a very good driver. And we were just going like literally half a block over. And she goes, "Okay, everybody buckle up, get your seatbelts on. Mom, do you have your seatbelt on?" And I'm like, I'm getting it. And her friend she goes, things can change in a minute. In 1 minute, your whole life can change. And her friend Braceland goes, actually, it can change in a split second. And I was like, wow, yeah, my life really did change in a split second. It was the moment I was coming home from work and I'd worked so hard to build my fitness career and I loved it. I was doing, fitness videos and infomercials, and I'm cruising along Ventura Boulevard when I had an SUV shoot out of a parking lot. They just smashed into me. I was T-boned, thrown 30 feet, and was sliding across the asphalt. And when I came to a stop, I looked down at my leg and it was just crumbled into pieces. Like, I was scared to let go of my leg because I was afraid it actually might fall off my body. My foot was dangling off. There was blood everywhere. And one of the first things I thought was, oh gosh, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. I had no idea just how bad it was. And luckily, I had a guy he ran over, took his belt off, and he made a tourniquet on my leg because I didn't realize at the time my femoral artery was actually severed and I was bleeding out. Luckily, I was rushed to the hospital and put in induced coma. And when I woke up out of a coma, the doctor looked at me and said, I'm so sorry, Miss Lago. There's nothing we can do for you. Your leg is like a war wound. Um, we're going to have to amputate it. You only have a 1% chance of saving it. So I'm so sorry. And I was like, what? Like, what is going on? I was like, oh, well, you said 1% chance. Well, then there's still a chance. And I want to keep my leg. So we need to find a doctor who's going to be willing to save it. My gosh, Annie, that took an act of God. It took pulling strings, knowing doctors, having connections. And they finally got me transferred, and it took months in the hospital. I mean, thousands of hours of just excruciating pain and 34 surgeries. And they ended up being able to save my leg. And I really thought, okay, the worst is over. I'm an athlete. I know, work hard, eat healthily, get rest, you heal, you move on. And, the pain wasn't getting any better, but I was like, "Okay." I grew up with Answer in Texas where we had sayings like, "Suck it up, get her done," and, "No pain, no gain," and all those sayings as an athlete, like, "Pain is weakness, leaving your body." So I was, like, fighting forward, and, remember going to this one doctor's appointment for my checkup, and I thought, "He's gonna be so proud of me because I was upright on crutches." And, he looks at me and he was like, "Oh my goodness." And I'm like, "Wow, that's not the reaction I was hoping for." I was thinking he was gonna be, like, "Oh, you look great. You're upright." He said started to examine me and he's like, "Are you the kind of person that likes to push through pain?" And I said, "Well, yes, sir, I am." He's like, "You need to stop." He goes, "You've got something very serious." And I kind of thought, "Well, yeah, duh, I got hit by an SUV." He goes, "No, you've got complex regional pain syndrome." Actually, back then it was called RSD. Um, and he said, I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "Well, you need to go back and get in your wheelchair." I'm like, "For how long?" He goes, "Forever." He goes, "This is incurable. Your life is never going to be the same." He goes, You're never going to be able to work. You won't be able to walk. You'll probably have to wear orthopedic shoes if you can even get a shoe on your foot." And I was just like, "What?" I felt like I had been kicked in the gut. And I just remember crying all the way home. And then I was like, "I'm not getting back in that wheelchair. That's not the life. That's not the vision I see for me." I mean, nothing wrong with wheelchairs. My little brother's been in a wheelchair his entire life,
Yeah.
but that's not the life that I imagine for me. So instead of getting back in my wheelchair, I went straight to physical therapy. And the physical therapist was like, "Amberly, what are you doing here today? You don't even have an appointment." And I'm like, "I know I don't, but I just learned something. And if I want to have the life that I've always imagined, then I'm going to have to work harder than I've ever worked before."
Wow. So let's take that back because you wake up um out of the coma and they say you have a 1% chance and you automatically believed, and knowing you, I know that you are the person that automatically believes, like, I'm going to figure out how to be that 1%. It's not going to be easy, but I'll figure it out. Like, what gives you that drive, or what makes you have the ability to say that? Because I think a lot of people would say, I guess I'm gonna have to amputate.
Yeah, you know what? I think my whole life, I think how we grow up, um, it I grew up in a home where I didn't feel safe. I was also a middle child and my parents fought a lot. And I was the one who was the mediator, who was the I would find solutions. I became kind of a people pleaser. I wanted to make sure my little brother was okay. Wanted to make sure my big brother didn't beat the crap out of me. I would have to kind of judge how things were the minute my stepdad walked through the door. Is it safe? Is it scary? Should I run? Should I leave? Um, my dad, I love him, God bless him, but tends to be very negative, very pessimistic. And I thought, that's not how I want to live. So from a young age, I always thought, well, you know, um, I'm not going to think that way. I'm going to focus on the good. And I realized when I did focus on the good got better. When I did focus on solutions, I could figure things out. I never had things just handed to me. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. I started working when I was 8 years old. In fact, I was cooking for Ruby and her friend night before last, and she goes, "How old were you when you learned how to cook?" And I said, "Oh, I was 8 years old because my parents got divorced and my dad didn't know how to cook. And so I cooked for him and my brothers." She goes, "Wow." So I always figured things out. I think through challenges, we can decide on letting our circumstances define us, or we can say, I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to figure a way out. I'm going to get through this. And so I think everything I went through, good and bad as a kid, being an athlete and having a great mentor who pushed me, having a dance teacher who was my role model and taught me all about being an entrepreneur and taught me about business. Um, it also helped me focus on the good uh, and showed me always that, like, I would do 3 pirouettes and she'd be like, "Yeah, that was good, but you could do 4." Track coach, "Yeah, you won, but next time you could be faster." So I learned a lot of things from these great mentors and I think that it's up to us to decide on what we're gonna focus on, and we have the ability to develop that mental toughness. I don't think that we're always born with this mental toughness. I think that we can learn it, but it's something that we have to practice. And I say that because my two brothers, we grew up exactly the same household. My little brother sits on death row in Texas. He went a complete different direction. He got involved with drugs and alcohol and didn't have the help. My older brother still struggles in and out of jail. I had an outlet of athleticism and dance, and I chose to learn from great mentors. And I think it's so important who you choose to spend your time around and who you surround yourself with. That's why I'm so big on having a circle of people. That's why I love our mastermind. I know we can go in there, we can talk, we can be vulnerable, we can share what's going on in our business, and then we can help each other through it. And we can focus on the good. Not that we're Pollyanna pretending that nothing's bad, but we know that there are solutions when we focus on the good.
Agree. I think mindset is one of those things that you do decide and you get to choose. And it's so easy to do when things are going right. But when things are challenging, it's still a choice. And I think you show the world that. And I love too that you do get to do it in community. I love our mastermind that we get to come together, and there've been some challenging things, but we push each other to grow and support and help each other, and I think that community makes a huge difference.
Oh, I think that community is powerful. Look, I tried to do it alone. And when I look back, even my community was being in track. My community was my dance company.
Yeah.
And I lived at the dance studio and I lived on the track. And I made sure that I was in the middle of those groups. And then I look to where I am today, and I couldn't stay sober if I didn't have a sober community. I couldn't do this entrepreneurial journey if I didn't have our family, our mastermind. I wouldn't want to, I tried doing it alone and it didn't work. I was overwhelmed. I hit rock bottom. And so I think community is powerful. Yeah, we can be strong on our own, but together we're unstoppable when we can come together.
Agree. And I'm so much the same. Even like through owning Orange Theory, I didn't necessarily want to own a gym, but I really wanted to build a community. And it was that same thing. Like I grew up very similar, like, just suck it up and get it done. And we
Yeah.
can do that. But if we do it together in a community, it is so powerful, whether it's fitness or being an entrepreneur. When we come as one, it's a strength.
And I love that you said that. And I love that Orange Theory too. I think the special thing about Orange Theory is that it's a community. You
Mhm.
feel that there's community there. Um, I had so many misconceptions about grit and hustling and the grind. I mean, my whole life, I was never the best dancer. I was never the most talented. I never had the most money or the best looks. I mean, people made fun of me when I was younger. They called me Annie anorexic, actually, because I was so skinny. I was a tomboy. I never had boyfriends. I finally got a boyfriend when I was a senior in high school. But I had grit and I knew I could work hard and I could take more dance classes than anybody else because I was going to get better. Like I was like, whatever I would study harder to ace the test. I knew that that was something that I could do. I wasn't the best, but I had grit and I could outwork. And I really kind of was like, yeah, I do have a PhD and suck it up. I can do this. I had some grit. And my misconceptions about grit was like I mistook health scares for heroic acts. Like I was like, oh, I remember one time passing a kidney stone while I was giving a motivational speech and calling it inspiration. I nearly died. I ended up going septic. That was crazy. I mistook like sacrifice for success. Can't tell you how much like family time and deprivation, times I would even skip going to the bathroom because I was like, nope, I got to keep working harder. This is success. Sacrifice is success. And I mean, I would mistake fear for function. And I call and stubbornness for strength and called it grit. And I realized that's not grit. That's not, Angela Duckworth says that uh, grit is the key predictor in success. And I do believe it takes grit to take success, but I believe we need to have grit with connection. And I feel like when we have grit without connection, it's just resistance. It's us hitting roadblocks and solely relying on ourselves to get anything accomplished. And that leads to burnout, to fatigue, to mental health issues, to hitting rock bottom. It did for me anyway. I realized when we have grit with connection, that is where we really truly find the resilience to keep moving forward because we have each other. We can learn from each other. We can support one another. We can cheer each other on. And when you know that you're not alone, there is something when somebody can say, oh, me too. Yeah, I have felt that way. I have felt depressed. I've felt overwhelmed. And this is what I did. This was what I did to get through it. It's like, oh, you can take a breath and realize there's hope. And so I think that connection is powerful.
Absolutely. And I think we have a lot of people on today that will be listening that are in that mindset of grit. And how did you make that change to say it's not all about the push and you prioritize sleep and you prioritize yourself? Like, how did you do that? How did you make that shift?
Well, I learned the hard way. I, you know, am very stubborn and I'm working on that. But I would just push and push and push. And I ended up in the ER 6 times in 1 year. And finally the doctor pulls me aside. Not that physician's assistant, not the nurse, not the front desk, the doctor says, "What are you doing? You can't end up here anymore. What
Mm.
what's going on with your health?" And I was pushing so hard that my body was failing. I was getting these infections. And it wasn't until I ended up going septic and I was in ICU and I had two different doctors walk in and say, "If you would have waited one more day, you would have died." That was the scariest moment for me because, yeah, having a motorcycle accident, that was scary. That there was a lot of fear, pain, but knowing just how fragile we are, like our health is everything. And without it, we can't make an impact. We can't go out there and make a positive influence on people's lives. And it was at that moment that it really scared me. And it was at that moment that I was like, I have got to take care of my health. And a friend of mine told me, she said, Amberly, your impact is only as strong as you are healthy. And that really hit me because I really want to help people, but how can I help people if I'm not taking care of myself? And so I started changing things. Like I started making a list of all the things that were non-negotiables for me, things that I had to do. Like if I don't do these things, I will feel it either mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And so I made a list. And I think it's important, like for you to make a list of what are the things that you can do that help you stay grounded, help you stay healthy, and help you to thrive, not just survive, but to thrive. And so for me on that list was moving my body, prayer, reading something out of like I read, this is the book on my desk today, but it's called A Women's Way Through the 12 Steps. But I love books and it doesn't take long to read, literally 5-10 minutes in the morning. I have a gratitude practice and I have a group of ladies. We call each other the God Squad and we keep ourselves accountable with our gratitude practice because that gratitude is really medicine for my soul. That is what shifts my mindset when I'm in a place where I'm feeling anxious or depressed, or I like switch it to gratitude. And it's amazing. It is truly alchemy. It really does shift your perspective and change the way you feel about your situation. And so my non-negotiables also are really taking care of my gut health. I did not realize just how that made a difference in my life. Not just physically, like the bloating is gone, my digestion's better, I feel better, I have more energy, but also like the clarity I have and the brain fog is gone. And so and then I do things like I've switched the way I think about rest, and I've made rest a part of my business strategy. And I wear like an aura ring that will tell me it's being charged right now. I woke up this morning and realized I didn't get my sleep data last night, but I'm so addicted to this ring because it will tell me how much REM sleep, deep sleep, how like it will tell you everything from even about it will predict when I'm going to start my period. Maybe that's too much information, but but I really take my health seriously. And now when I wake up and I see my aura ring and it's like, you got 7.5 hours of sleep, you're ready for the day. I'm like, yes. Whereas used to, I would have been like, that's too much sleep. You should be getting up earlier. You need to do more. You need to push more. I've
Mhm.
shifted that resting is how you can really tap into your resilience.
Oh my gosh, we are so much the same. One, I'm wearing an Oura ring. I first thing I do in the morning is check that data.
Have
And
you woken up days and when you're like, crap, my ring was dead?
yes, totally. Like I want to know how well and how much I slept.
I know. I
All
know.
of and just that shift in thinking that rest was a waste of time to knowing like this is when my body and my brain recharge. I need this. Also just the movement is so important. And then the gut health. I have the same thing. I'm
Yeah.
repeat drink and I know that we do the same program and it has made such a difference to me. And
It's
I'm
a supplement. It's the only thing that I've stuck to for 2 years straight
yeah.
because I felt a difference immediately. Like I love it. It has really I don't leave home without it. People ask me all the time, "Oh my gosh, you travel so much. How are you going from this place to this event to this event?" And I'm like, because I take care of my health, I take all my supplements with me. I make sure the first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is I drink my pink drink.
Yeah. Me too. My family was making fun of me because we just got back from a trip from Europe, and I swear like a fourth of my bag was supplements and different things that I had to have, but I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it goes with." Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, for sure. I take all my stuff with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes such a difference. And my discovery on gut health was accidental. My son was having a lot of issues, and we started making our own yogurt one time. And I was like, oh my goodness, I sleep so much better. And then it started this whole journey on gut health and what a huge difference it has. And so I've tried a lot of different things. And this one with the pink drink is the one that I love and stick with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it too, and I kinda stumbled across it accidentally too, which I'm glad I did because I've had so many companies and so many people say, "Oh," especially dealing with CRPS,
Yeah.
"Take this, do this, it's gonna cure you, blah, blah, blah." And I just kinda got a little skeptical about things, but how I learned about it was a mutual friend of ours, Brooke Hemingway, sent me a gift in the mail. And in part of the gift, it was like a sweatshirt, a candle, and sweet card, and then the gut health supplements. And I'm like, well, she's a former nurse, former fitness instructor, and has 6 kids. And if she is like the Energizer Bunny. And I was like, I didn't even look to see what the ingredients were. I just knew if she took it, I was going to take it. And I took it, and I didn't know that like she had that's part of her business for a long time. I didn't know.
No,
I just messaged her. I'm like, "Hey, Brooke, I like that stuff. Tell me where to order it." And she goes, "Oh, I'm glad you like it." And I have not stopped taking it since. I love it.
I love that. Well, for our listeners that are interested, I'll put a link in our show notes of where you can get more information and order as well. But
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, let's jump back in because you have a story that I just love that honestly had a personal impact on me. And it's when you're seeing the doctor, you decide that you can't take the pain anymore and you want to amputate your leg, and how he looks at us, how he looks at your leg. Can you share that story?
Yeah, I still get emotional about this.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because 'cause I'm talking to you too, and I love you so much. When you talk to somebody and you like, they're your true blue friend and you can just totally like be yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's why the emotions are coming out because I just love you.
Well,
Uh,
thank you for sharing.
yeah, I was like, it was about a year after my accident, and I was going to physical therapy. First, I had a physical therapist come into the house. And I remember the first time, and the nurses would come to the house every day at first to change bandages. And remember, this one nurse came over and she was going to do an assessment on what I would need medically for the future. And she comes over. She was okay. Well, let me see your leg. And at this point, I had, I think, 3 compression socks on because it would swell up so big. I mean, I'm talking like I couldn't even wear a shoe. It was so big and swollen, and it looked bad. It looked like honestly, it looked like it should have been amputated. And so I don't blame her for saying this, but she comes over and she looks at it and the first thing she said is, "Well, are you gonna keep it?" And I was like, "What do you mean am I gonna keep it? I kept it. Yeah, I'm keeping it. It's my leg." And so I didn't like her very much, but looking back, I can understand why she would think that. So I really did so much, fought to keep it, was going to physical therapy. I went to physical therapy so much, they actually gave me a key. I still have a key to the facility. They're like, Amberly, here's a key. So I would come when it was closed. I'd just go. Ruby would go with me. Yeah. And so I could not get out of pain. And I just wanted to go back to my life in my business. And I realized there's no going back. So, and I realized that the hard way too. But I went in to Dr. Wiss, who's an amazing doctor. He's in my book. I'm actually in his book. I apparently was my leg, the, saving it was the hardest case he had ever worked on. And I go into him. I'm like, Dr. Wiss, thank you for all you've done for me, for working so hard, for believing in me, just trying to save it. And I said, we got to cut it off. I said, it's just giving me too much pain. I just want to get on with my life.
Yeah.
And he sat in front of me. And usually, you know, they'll put your leg on the table.
Mhm.
He sat in front of me or in a chair and he put my leg on his nice white coat. And I thought, oh my gosh, my first thought was, wow, I can't believe he is putting my disgusting leg on his nice white jacket. Like, I felt like, oh, it's so gross. I can't believe he's even touching it. And he looked at it and the way he touched it and the way he looked at it, he looked at it like it was a masterpiece. And something shifted in me. And I was like, wow, if he can look at it that way, maybe I can learn to look at it that way too. And um, he said, you know, we can't amputate. He said, Amberly, you've got a disease, you've got CRPS. Because if we amputate, it could make your leg worse. It could even spread. It's not the solution. But what that day did for me is it changed my whole life because I was able to slowly start to look down at my leg instead of looking at it with rejection and hate and disgust. Like I really hated it. And I could look at it with acceptance and love and peace and looked at my scars as like, wow, look at all that I have survived and look at how amazing the human spirit is and how much that we can get through. And I started to actually love myself again a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's something how just one shift in your perspective, one thing somebody can say, one way somebody can look at you. And I think that sometimes that's all we need is for somebody to love us before we can love ourselves, until we can love ourselves again, or somebody to believe in us until we can start to believe in ourselves again. And so I went from being so ashamed of my leg and never letting anybody see my scars to now I wear skirts, I wear shorts, I go to the gym. You know, I have to wear boots because my ankle's fused and my leg is made of metal all the way down to my toes. And so I have a nickname at the gym. Well, actually, I think I have two. One of them is Boots. Think I'm trying to start a trend and I'm like, no, really not. I just can't wear any other shoes and I'm going to work out. And then somebody came up to me the other day at the gym and said, you know, I just thought you should know that a lot of people around here have been nicknaming you Sarah Connors or Sarah Connor from the Terminator. Is that her name?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, maybe I need to smile more here. I don't know.
I think it's just because you're so strong.
Well, I'm just grateful that, you know, it's little moments like that that just change your life. And now I show my scars so others know that they can heal.
Yeah. I love that you do that. I think when you shared that story the first time, it just it made me realize too, like, I look in the mirror and I'm very self-critical, and I could be like, "Look at that," or "Look at this." And instead of just thinking, "You know what? I have to change how I think about me," in just that you are a masterpiece, and it doesn't matter, like, if you have legs that don't look exactly the way you want, or there's a little bit extra somewhere, it's okay. Like you are a masterpiece that God made you and you're changing. I think just gave permission, like for me to have the same mind shift change.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it wasn't, it's not easy sometimes. I think, you know, oh, I can be so hard on myself.
Yeah.
And, and, but again, shifting your perspective on how you see things. And then also, you know, sometimes I'll just be hard on myself and I'm an overcoming perfectionist where I'd be like, obsessing about, "Oh my gosh, that caption I did for that post is not good," and, "Oh, I can't find the quite the right event space that I want for my next event," and just obsessing over minor details, and I look or something I've messed up on, and I look down at my leg at how imperfect it is, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, there's a reminder that, you know what? Nothing's really I don't think anything's perfect." Like, and I think I connect more with people who are not showcasing perfection all the time because I can't relate to it.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people put on this face of perfect. I know that was me for a lot of years, but it's not how we connect. I think we connect through our imperfections, but we just got to show up and let people see them.
Yeah, I agree.
So now you have this best selling book, this top podcast. Take us from when you decide, okay, I'm going to keep my leg to now. Was it always something that you were, you had a business and had a business plan to get there, or how did that come about?
Well, at first I really thought, oh, resilience is about bouncing back. And I was just trying so hard to fix what was broken. I completely lost my business. We had $2.9 million worth of medical expenses, a lien on our house. And the way that I had my business set up, is all the new like the trainers that I had come in, they were on a system to where ever so many sessions they trained a client, they would get a bump and raise. And that continued until that client eventually became theirs. It was my way of really being fair to them, but also like I wanted them to be loyal to me and keep knowing that as long as they stick with me, they're going to get fed. They're going to get new clients. Well, that way of work, because I couldn't train clients anymore, eventually ran out, my business fizzled out. So it wasn't the smartest setup for my business. And so I was trying to go back to training clients and it was literally killing myself. And it wasn't until I'd had another surgery and I was wearing one of those, medical boots, and I was training the client with my medical boots, and my husband comes up to me. He worked out at the same gym as where I worked, and he goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Get off your leg. You're bleeding out across the gym floor." And I looked, and my stitches had come open, and I was literally bleeding across the gym floor. And I was like, "Okay, this is not working for you. It's not serving my clients the best that I can. It's not serving me for sure." Because I get home and I couldn't move, and I'd be nauseated from the pain. And it wasn't fair to my family, so I was like, "Well, what can I do?" Because I love people and I wanna help and I wanna get back to work, and I'd had so many people that would come up to me at the gym, and I'd be on the bike, and I remember there's one lady on the bike next to me, and all these people would come up to me, like, one after another, and just share their challenges, their problems, what was going on, and the lady next to me finally goes, "You've been on this bike for 45 minutes and people have not stopped coming up to you wanting to talk to you about their problems. Doesn't that get on your nerves?" And I was like, "No, actually, I love it because I know I can help them and I want to be able to help." That gives pain purpose for me. And she said, "Well, you should write a book." And then I had somebody else say, "You should write a book. You could, instead of helping one person at a time, maybe you could help more than one person at a time. You could help thousands." Okay, well, I'd never written a book. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book. Everybody thought I was crazy. I didn't learn a computer. Didn't even go to college. People were like, "Yeah, yeah, you should just stick to the fitness stuff. Don't write the book." And I was like, then I'm definitely going to write the book. So
Yeah.
I hand wrote like 90% of my book in a notebook. Like I love notebooks. So in a notebook, just like that, just like this. And lo and behold, bought a computer, laptop, my first laptop, typed it up, got an editor, found a publisher, published it. It published, launched on the Today Show and became a bestseller in three categories. And so I'm only sharing that because if somebody like me that had no experience, didn't even own a computer, had everybody telling me I was crazy to do it, can write a book and it can become a bestseller. And I got interviewed by Megan Kelly and then went on the doctors and Hallmark. And now I'm speaking on stages all across the country. If I can do that, it's never too late. You're never too old. You're never too dumb. These are some of the things I told myself. I didn't write my book till I think I was 48 years old. I didn't do my TED Talk till I was like 49. Anything's possible. So if you want to write a book, this is your sign right now. Start writing. Just make a commitment to yourself to start writing every day.
I love that because so many people have that dream, and I think we get in our own way. I know that was the case for me for so long, but you guys, if you have not read this book, you
Oh,
have to read the book. It is
thank
so good and
you.
so inspirational. You'll just love it. True grit and grace. It's an amazing book. So,
Thank
Emily, I feel like I could just stay and talk with you all day, but I want
I
to.
do. I love you. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do feel like I can talk. So we'll just talk later.
Okay, sounds good. But what is the best way people can connect with you?
Yeah, and reach out to me. AmberlyLago.com is where you can find my upcoming events, my masterminds, Unstoppable Life Mastermind. You can find out more information about that at truegritandgrace.com. And that's my podcast, my book. Instagram is Amberly Lago Motivation. And, if you're listening to this, take a screenshot and share on your social media. Tag me at Amberly Lago Motivation.
I have a website called bethepersonco.com and it'll be on there. So I'm super excited for that. But if you tag me to Annie Randall OTF on Instagram, I'll share as well. And Kimberly, thank you. Thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for just sharing with our community on, gosh, so many things, health and fitness and your journey, and just showing us that your journey that you start out with doesn't have to be the journey you end with. And we're all evolving here together.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on and just being able to share with your audience. And I'll leave them with one more thing. You know what? I'm so grateful to be here. If they text me, you can get the free downloadable playbook. If you just text the word grit to 818-214-7378, it's a playbook on how to tap into your own superpower, resilience, and thrive. Because I really want your amazing audience to be able to take something and implement it into their life. Um, if challenges come up. So yeah, text me. You can also just text me there. That's me answering you back. So sometimes it takes me a little bit to get back to you, but have texted me and been like, is that, is this really Amberly text? I'm like, yeah, it's me. It's me texting you back because I like to connect with people.
I love that. I love that about you. And what an incredible gift. We'll put that in the show notes as well. So if people missed it, we'll definitely have it so they can connect with you. Thank you for that gift for the audience.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. We're going to wrap up for today. It would mean the world to me if you would subscribe and leave a 5-star review. And we'll see you next week on Be the Person podcast.